Morning, everyone. I thank the organizers for giving this opportunity to deliver this talk, PH management in India. What are the hurdles? And the next few minutes, we'll be talking about the different aspects of different problems that we face in the day-to-day management of pulmonary arterial hypertension in this country. Some of these problems are global in nature, while some are peculiar to Indian scenario. The most important problem is the delay in diagnosis. As all of us know, pulmonary arterial hypertension is a rare disease with an estimated prevalence of 7 to 10 per million, though we don't have statistics from Indian situation. It has got insidious onset and subtle non-specific symptoms that overlap with other diseases like effort intolerance, giddiness, palpitations, weakness, asthenia, and these common complaints compete with other common diseases in diagnosis that include asthma, hypertension, anemia, and general asthenia, etc. Because of this, there is a long gap between the onset of symptoms to the diagnosis, which is almost 24 to 33 months. And there's not much of a change compared to what it was in 1978 to even recently 2010 reveal registry. Most of these patients, 70% of these patients, present with class 3 or class 4 symptoms. This is across the world in multiple registries, including France registry or NIH registry or reveal registry. This is important because late presentation will not be able to treat the early disease. If you identify and treat the patients early, we can alter its natural history. The regular early institution of treatment and monitoring them and escalating the treatment will prevent the remodeling of the right ventricle and right heart failure. All of us know that the onset of right heart failure will lead to rapid progression of the disease and is a poor prognostic factor. So it is important to identify these patients much early in their disease natural history. Another important problem is the problem with the healthcare delivery in India. Most in India, the healthcare delivery is very much fragmented. There is no particular system. It varies from state to state and different in different states. And we have got tertiary care, academic institutions, corporate hospitals, trust hospitals, primary health centers, regional health hospitals, private nursing homes. Any kind of healthcare delivery is possible. This leads to no standard hierarchical system for referral. There are no uniform standards of care, and medical knowledge and practice vary widely across institutions and physicians. Patients may be managed by anyone from an unqualified medical practitioner in a village to a specialist in tertiary care center. Many patients do not have continuing medical records giving valid, reliable, comprehensive information. Most of the time, medical records are scribbled on a piece of paper, which are lost very often, and the writing is illegible, and the different methods of recording that will be of no use. And what are the problems in evaluation? Many times, thorough systemic evaluation cannot be done because of the socio-economic factors and lack of infrastructure. Many centers do not perform right heart catheterization or invasive pulmonary angiogram. Some cardiologists lack time and expertise. They are more busy with the coronary interventions, and they don't like to do right heart catheterization. And actually, some of them discourage it. They say echocardiogram is sufficient. Acute vasodilator testing is seldom done in this country, which is important before instituting proper therapy. And almost always primary vasodilators like sildenafil are started just based on an echocardiographic findings. Because of this, both under and over diagnosis of pulmonary hypertension is fairly common. PH clinics is an important concept which is practiced in many academic institutions in the West. They are seldom seen in this country. They are helpful in reaching a correct diagnosis, in advising appropriate treatment, and managing patients scientifically and appropriately. Private hospitals do not have interest in such academic endeavors. Physicians in government sector are academically excellent. There are many multiple specialties will be there in the government setup, but they lack time and infrastructure. Most hospitals are overcrowded and they don't have sufficient space for us to even do a proper 6-minute walk test. Coming to the cost factors, most of the drugs are relatively cheap in India, the genetic variants, and compared to the cost in the US. However, even in India, many people cannot buy these medicines because of they have to pay from their pocket. And per capita income in India is about 10,000 rupees per month. And these drugs per month cost about 6,000 to 7,000 rupees. So you can imagine many patients cannot even afford to buy these medicines. Comprehensive and complete evaluation is also costly, and physicians become judicious, and again leads to inappropriate diagnosis and treatment. And due to economic and cultural beliefs, many patients take inappropriate doses. Sometimes I've seen patients taking Bosentan 62.5 milligrams once a day. And the cost factors are becoming very disturbing. This is a mail which I got from one patient in 2015. Obviously, a poor patient who is suffering from severe pulmonary arterial hypertension. In this letter, she expresses that she is unable to bear the cost of the medicines, and she wants to donate her kidney, and rather not donate, rather sell the kidney and make money, and so that she can buy her own medicines without burdening the family. These kind of mails really are disturbing. And coming to the pharmacopoeia, the prostanoids like epoprostenol, treprostinil, iloprost are not available. So also Selexipag, they're not commercially available. They're far too expensive to import, even for the rich Indians. Only a handful of Indians can afford and import them. I hardly know anybody getting them. Administering continuous intravenous infusion is a disaster in this country, where the infrastructure is, education literacy levels are very poor. Actually, the company which manufactures the treprostinil intravenous, they approached me in 2004 to be part of a randomized control trial in the country. I discouraged them, saying that it is going to be a problem. They avoided me and did this study in other centers in the country. After recruiting 44 patients, they had to stop the study because out of the 44 patients, 9 deaths, which are 6 in the randomized to placebo, catheter dislodgement and serious adverse events related to sepsis or infection occurred. So it is inappropriate therapy where local healthcare delivery systems and our patient living conditions are unacceptable for a chronic intravenous infusion via indwelling catheter. So really, we cannot think of giving continuous intravenous infusion of some of these drugs in a scenario like India. Now, the drug regulatory authorities are not particularly helpful. My experience has been uniformly bad. In the early stages, when sildenafil was proven to be beneficial, we wanted to, at least we could not even give off-label prescription of sildenafil, because DCGI came out with a peculiar ruling that only endocrinologists, psychiatrists, and neurologists can prescribe sildenafil for erectile dysfunction. They are rational, but the problem is they are worried that sildenafil can cause sudden death in cardiac patients. But surprisingly, they excluded cardiologists from this. And on one occasion, I had an personal interaction with the DCGI, then DCGI, and he was not even willing to listen to a single word from me. And while conducting the clinical trials, Griffon study, we got so much delay in the getting permission in the country. We could not enroll many patients, and we could not roll over our patients from the Seraphin randomized control trial to open label trial. And one of the patients was receiving, fortunately, was receiving macitentan active drug in the Seraphin trial. Once the trial is stopped, and he has to buy endothelin receptor antagonist in the market, and he could not do it, and actually committed suicide. So much for the DCGI helpful attitude in granting permissions in timely manner. And recently, as per the pharma industry sources, Selexipag has been waiting for regulatory approval for more than 2 years. And I promised some of my patients that it will be available, and they keep asking me when the new drug will come. So the drug controller in this country is not particularly helpful as far as the management of pulmonary hypertension is concerned. And there are other issues like social issues like marriage and pregnancy. Most marriages in India are arranged by parents, and childbearing is valued very high. And we advise our PH patients and Eisenmenger patients not to conceive. This becomes a big social problem, and parents often conceal the diagnosis and perform the marriage. Soon after the marriage, when the new family starts, the lady goes into the in-laws house. She conceives, and they are brought in a sick status, 6 months pregnancy, 7 months pregnancy, with as if the pulmonary hypertension or Eisenmenger is diagnosed once again. This problem is particularly more common with Eisenmenger syndrome. And coming to Eisenmenger syndrome, many children with congenital shunt lesions are not diagnosed early and referred for coronary surgery at an appropriate age. And many even so-called cardiac tertiary care centers cannot offer pediatric cardiac surgery, and many children go on to develop Eisenmenger syndrome. socioeconomic factors, illiteracy, lack of government infrastructure, lack of subsidies for these surgeries, they contribute to the problem, and regional disparities are very high. If you see the development of congenital heart disease surgery, we lag behind the developed world by almost 2-3 decades. And still there are many centers in India which cannot perform congenital heart disease surgery. If you see, the Anita Saxena has reported that if you see the regional disparities and the number of patients undergoing surgery, the problem is extreme in northern India and northeast India. At least South India is slightly better, that 72% of the diagnosed congenital heart disease patients undergo surgery at some stage. And again, staying with the congenital heart disease and PAH, one of the common problems is young ladies having ASD and PAH often undergo defect closure without proper evaluation. Some of these patients actually have idiopathic pulmonary arterial hypertension with incidental ASD. In these situations, ASD may not be large, or it may be just small and moderate. They should not be closed, because of idiopathic pulmonary arterial hypertension is a progressive disease, and this leads to worst post-operative course. So proper evaluation of these young ladies with ASD and severe disproportionate PAH should be kept in mind while advising defect closure. One of the treatment options in pulmonary arterial hypertension is heart-lung transplantation. It is very nascent stage in India. It is very expensive beyond reach of the most patients, and very few centers offer it. Patients are often referred to in a moribund state, and long-term results in Indian scenario are not yet published. And this is a mail from one of my patients who is upper middle class lady. The parents wanted to go for heart-lung transplant, and they are going for fundraising. And this is not always successful. And unfortunately, this lady, though she underwent heart-lung transplant successfully, she succumbed 2.5 to 3 years post-op. Now, another common problem is a problem in the evaluation management of thromboembolic pulmonary hypertension. The initial screening test itself, VQ scans, are not widely available in the country. Many institutions cannot do lung perfusion scan or ventilation scan. Often they diagnose based on the CTPA. There are some problems with the CTPA, the kind of CT scanner we have got, and the expertise of the radiologist. And many physicians do not do invasive pulmonary angiograms. And unfortunately, I have seen many physicians using D-dimer and venous Doppler of lower limbs to rule out thromboembolic pulmonary hypertension, which is highly inappropriate. The treatment of thromboembolic pulmonary hypertension is pulmonary endarterectomy, which is very good. It can normalize, it's a curative surgery, and but unfortunately, many centers cannot offer this surgery. Widespread expertise is not there. And pulmonary balloon angioplasty is done by even fewer centers, and for some reason, many physicians and patients back out from surgery. And again, one of the problems is inappropriate treatment is fairly common for all pulmonary hypertension patients are treated with the pulmonary vasodilators, and this is inappropriate in group 2, group 3 patients. And some physicians just start based on the echo, and in incomplete evaluation, inappropriate dosing are fairly common. Now, coming to pulmonary hypertension of the left heart disease, left ventricular systolic or diastolic dysfunction leads to pulmonary hypertension. It's a marker of poor prognosis. And whenever in systolic dysfunction, the transpulmonary gradient is more than 15 millimeters, or pulmonary vascular resistance more than 5 Wood units, the heart transplantation is a problem. We should not do it. And in India, even when the patient can afford and has to be referred for transplantation, heart transplantation, they are referred very late, and by the time most of the patients they have fixed pulmonary hypertension, and fixed pulmonary hypertension cannot be treated simply with pulmonary vasodilators. The ideal treatment is LVAD, and LVAD is very expensive and not easily available in this country. So it becomes difficult even in left heart failure, systolic hypertension, systolic failure, pulmonary hypertension. When they are to be referred for pulmonary heart transplantation, pulmonary hypertension becomes a problem. And pulmonary hypertension, pulmonary vasodilators are not indicated in group 3 pulmonary hypertension. However, many physicians just start it. It can lead to worsening of the disease outcome, and VQ mismatch can increase with the non-specific pulmonary vasodilators. And actually, endothelin receptor antagonists may worsen the mortality in patients with ILD, and physicians training is the solution for this. And another problem peculiar to India is the pulmonary hypertension as a sequelae to rheumatic mitral disease. And often again, our patients undergo surgery very late. By the time some of these patients have fixed pulmonary hypertension, it may not reverse after the mitral surgery, and they continue to be sick. and the treatment of this particular aspect of pulmonary hypertension is challenging, uncertain, and unsatisfactory. Pulmonary vasodilators may be helpful, but the solution is to do early surgery. Mitral valve disease has to be tackled before fixed pulmonary hypertension sets. Another therapy is non-pharmacological therapy, balloon atrial septostomy and port shunt. Again, many centers cannot offer it. They are risky in the centers where interventional cardiologists try to do balloon atrial septostomy. I have seen time and again taking up inappropriate patients with very high rate atrial pressures and low oxygen saturations. In such situation, doing a balloon atrial septostomy can be really problematic. Port shunt is emerging treatment in the management of pulmonary arterial hypertension. To my knowledge, only probably Dr. Prashant Center in Mumbai does it. Maybe other centers are doing, but these are evolving options which many centers can do, but still lack of, you can call physician inertia is preventing us from doing it. In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, a limited number of drugs are available in India. As I mentioned, prostanoids and selexipag are not available. Generic drugs are cheap, even then many patients cannot afford to buy without government subsidy or help. And comprehensive evaluation may not be feasible in all patients because of the financial factors and lack of infrastructure in many institutions. As I mentioned, prostanoids are not available. Inappropriate and inadequate treatment is not uncommon. Pulmonary endarterectomy for thromboembolic pulmonary hypertension is not done as often as it should be done. Heart-lung transplantation is prohibitively expensive, and in the management of pulmonary hypertension, drug control authorities are not particularly helpful. Thank you very much for your patient listening. Thank you.